Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Studio Rats live. That was very low, Paul. What's that all about? Please welcome that way somewhere, all the way from downtown Surrey, England. Please welcome Mr. Darby Todd to the live stream.
God, that sounds so rock and roll, doesn't it? Surrey, like not New York or the middle of London, but Surrey. Maybe that means I'm successful.
There's two of us from Surrey, so it's all right.
There you go. Two of us are successful. That and my jokes are already falling flat.
It's a good start. We were just before we went on air. Darby and I were reminiscing about how we actually met. It was Gadget Show Live, probably what 10?
Yeah, 2010, I think. Yeah, it's probably 2010.
It was getting a while ago.
I've got a connection. I've got a connection. I did the music for the Gadget Show.
Did you really?
I did.
Oh,
yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah, that was quite a nice royalty for a while.
I was about to say that must have annoyed you when it finished.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I quite enjoyed that.
But that was a TV show, right? Or did you just do like the entrance hall music for the
That'd be amazing. It was played in the lift as you were going up and down. You know,
exactly at the exhibition centre.
So, for those of you who don't know, Darby is drummer extraordinaire. Is currently, well, when you can tour, you're currently on tour with Martin Barr. I apologise for getting the pronunciation wrong in the trailer. And Key Masalo of Europe. That's two fairly.
Sorry, I've got to interrupt you. Did you just say Key Marsala, like the Indian dish?
It's Key Marcello.
Key Marcello. That's what I said.
Oh, I'm going to rename him now. That's good. Yeah, they are. I mean, they are kind of two slightly opposite ends of the rock and roll spectrum, I guess. You know, one's prog, one's cock rock, but then it's rock and roll. So it's as long as it's good, it's all valid. I think.
Totally agreed.
Can I just say something because I've got two drummers above me. If anyone here has any drummers jokes, I'm well up for these. Just the whole show, please, because it's the only way that I'm going to keep going.
My favorite drummer joke. We'll get a couple out early doors.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a drummer and a pair of Scholl sandals?
Oh, I haven't heard that.
I haven't heard this one either.
Scholl sandals buck up the feet.
Ah, that's good. That's good. That's good.
That's worse than my opening joke.
Talkie online.
Talkie's
but maybe that's because I'm a drummer, so I don't get it.
Fair enough. So, Darby, say we've known each other for a long time. We've hung out and all that sort of stuff and craziness. How thus far at this point I must apologize for two things. One, any strange noises you hear in the background are one of two things. One, it is the 5th of November in the UK, where we are celebrating the failed plot to blow up the Houses of Parliament. Currently, right now, I think we're wishing they'd done a better job, but hey. And the other potential for disturbance is I'm on duty tonight.
Oh.
Which means if my little ones wake up, I'll be dashing out the door. But to be honest, the Ritalin's probably kicking in about now, so they should be okay. That's a joke, by the way. It's a joke. It's a joke.
Wouldn't it be better to have the Valium kick in? Probably.
I'm not sure. Well, for me or for them?
I think we need to start talking about music, or we're going to get ourselves in trouble here.
We do. So the whole musical thing. How did you start thumping tubs? Because I've never asked, and I probably should.
Okay. So I was 6 when I started playing, and I bought a note home from school. I went to private school at the time before my dad took me out a few years later and thought it was pointless. And they sent me home with a note from school, and saying that I could either play violin or tuba or French horn. So I went home thinking, well, no, I don't want to play French horn. That's a bit crap. Violin sounds fun. So I went, oh, can I play violin? And my dad was like, no, you're not doing that. That's crap. And not that I've got anything against violin. That wasn't me that said that. And he said, look, just wait a little bit and I'll sort you out with something I think you like. And a week later, he bought me a pair of drumsticks and a little rubber pad. He was a bass player, so I think that's probably why he thought, right, I can have a cheap drummer here. And yeah, I had a little rubber pad, and I was actually probably on that for about the first 6 months of my life, and got drum lessons weekly, and then got my first kit like 6 months later, and it just kind of progressed from there. And I've never really stopped.
It's a dangerously addictive thing, isn't it? Hitting things.
Yeah. Well, it is. I mean, I always enjoyed it, and I think I was always naturally pretty good at it. But I never really sort of put a ton of effort into it till I kind of got to about 12 or 13, where I won this Young Drummer of the Year competition thing, which, I kind of think those sort of things are pointless. It's a bit stupid having a competition to see, who's best at something. But it was kind of cool in the fact that it made me realize, hold on, I'm quite good at this. This is something that I can actually carry on with and do well at. So that was kind of more the catalyst for me taking it a little bit more seriously and trying a bit harder, I'd say.
And at what point did you realize? At what point did you go, hang on a second, there's this thing as a hobby. I could actually make dough at this, and this could be what I do for a living. I could have quite a lot of fun. And
I don't think I ever thought that. I'm not so. I don't know if people kind of go, oh, I'm going to become a musician and make tons of money, because the majority of musicians, and there's some great players out there that just don't get the success or the money that they deserve. But for me, it was never about, oh, I think I could make a living out of this. It just sort of happened. Like I finished school, finished my sixth form, moved into London when I was about 18, and just started playing drums and started trying to meet people. And it was kind of like, it's just a real gradual progression that, like, even now that progression is still going on. I'm fortunate I do some really, really cool things, but I don't think that sort of improvement of what I do has sort of peaked. Well, I hope it hasn't peaked. Maybe it has.
I will say this, that you are a great believer in what actually all musical instrument teachers believe, is that practice pays off. Because I see
completely
your videos on YouTube of the stuff, like on Facebook and stuff, of you just actually practicing and coming up with new stuff and just putting in the hours. I know there's the whole 10,000 hours argument, and I actually think you need probably double or triple that to actually be a successful player and someone who is a good all-round musician. But I see what you do, and I go, yeah, that's why Darby's playing in the gigs he's doing, and I'm playing with Paul. Sorry, mate.
So I kick a bald man in the nuts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I don't even know him that well. I can't be mean to him yet. Maybe in the next half an hour I'll change my mind. But I do agree with you. I think I am a firm believer, and I preach that if you want to be good at anything, you have to put the hours in. I don't necessarily like kind of going, oh, if you put 10,000 hours in, because that could be 10,000 hours of pointless practice that's not necessarily going to get you good. But at the same time, there's plenty of people that are successful that have probably been playing the drums or guitar or whatever for like 3 or 4 years, and they're just they get to a reasonable standard and they're good, or they've got a really cool feel. But for me, I would get bored if I sort of sat on my backside and didn't try and continually improve myself. And you talk about like some of the stuff you see of me on Facebook. A lot of people would sit there and go, well, what's the point in doing that? That's not going to hold down a gig. And yeah, it's not. But I enjoy doing it. And actually, I think working on pointless, crazy timing modulations or crazy patterns, it just helps me as a dare I say it, musician, to be good at everything else. But yeah, I get bored of just sort of sitting down and doing the minimum. I want to kind of do as much as possible.
One of the first ever music shows I went to when I was probably, I don't know, 16, 17, turned up, and as we were leaving, I think it was at the NEC, or when they were at the London Music Show, it was at Wembley or wherever. Right. And we were leaving, and I could hear someone sort of playing some serious drums, and I went, I'm honing into that. And it was a guy who no one had heard of at the time, an Austrian guy called Thomas Lang.
Oh yeah.
a very young Thomas Lang, and he did a Q&A at the end, and so I put my hand up and said, look, there's not a drummer in here who wouldn't give body parts to be able to do what you've done tonight, but when do you actually do it? And he said, my day gig, my day job is with Jerry Halliwell. I never, ever do this stuff. However, if I get backed into a corner, I have the facility to get out of that corner and no one will know. And that's where I think technique for technique's sake actually comes in.
Yeah.
I think that's really where it's really important. You're not backed into a corner. I mean, drums is a very physical instrument. You're not backed into a corner by a muscle memory or any of those sort of things. It's the same on all instruments. I mean, as a guitar player, I know probably about 4 or 5 shapes that I can noodle around to my heart's content. Back me into a chord progression corner, I'm like, oh, this is going to sound really bad. But that's why you practice.
That's a really good point. And he's right. It's like when I teach my pupils, different stickings and stuff, they might go, oh, but how often am I going to use this? But like you say, there's times where you just get lost in what you're doing, especially if you're doing like a crazy fusion gig or something mad. And it's having the facility to basically do anything you want. Yeah. I actually studied drums with Thomas for quite a long time when I was a lot younger. So I used to go to his house over in Mill Hill in London.
Wow.
And sort of hang out for 3 hours at a time and go home demoralized because I realized I was shit.
I've got, this is going to get really drummery. Sorry, Paul, but I've got the first Thomas Lang DVD, the tuition DVD, and I'm still on
great
one because I can't do it to the level I want to be able to do it before I move on. I'm not one of these, I can do it a bit people. I want to be able to do it smoothly. And
wasn't if I remember rightly though, wasn't Exercise Run how to turn on your snares?
Maxus still struggling with that.
Maxus Wider coming with the first drummer joke of the evening. How many drummer jokes are there? At least a zillion.
That's very good.
That's a very good joke. That's a good joke. I actually I saw Maxus in Sweden last week because I was out recording the new Key Marcello album in Sweden. And Maxus works for Softtube. He's one of the main guys over at Softtube Plugins. And Maxus is awesome, as are Softtube.
Agreed on every level.
So we can geek out about some of that as well at some point, hopefully.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We can do the plugins thing. But also, you are a Toontrack artist, are you not?
I mean, I do a lot of work for Toontrack. Maybe I am a Toontrack artist. That kind of sounds quite regal. I like that. But yeah, I've been working with Toontrack now for about the last year. I made really, really good friends by mistake with Matthias Eklund, who is one of the co-owners of Toontrack. And since then he just started getting me on board to do some like MIDI packs and stuff like that. So I've actually just had my 3rd pack released. So doing a lot of work for them. It's a lot of fun.
And are you doing all that on the? Are you doing all of that on the V drums?
Yeah, which you can see behind me in my living room.
That's cool. So you just do it all on the V drums, and then they sort it out, and that's cool.
I mean, so the way it works is we kind of have an email discussion and say, we're looking for this idea or this idea. So for instance, the last 2 packs I did that came out about 3 weeks apart. One was called I can't even remember what it was called. I think like Big Rock Grooves or Massive Rock Grooves, just sort of like classic rock tunes based on things, like Motley Crue and Bon Jovi and stuff like that. And then the other pack I did was called British Invasion, which was obviously all the old sort of 60s and 70s British invasion bands. Which actually that pack was really difficult to do because doing my research, I listened to a lot of those songs and you realize a lot of those drummers back then, they played one drum pattern throughout an entire song. They did anything else. Yeah. So it's like sort of going, right, this song is based on House of the Rising Sun. And now I have to come up with like 35 different drum patterns and 20 different drum fills. It was actually quite difficult.
Wow. Hank says, hi, Hank. Hank says, will you guys share the link to Darby's YouTube channel? It's a great philosophy for improvement. Have you got?
I do, but I'm not very good with YouTube. I tend to just put up all my videos on my Facebook. So if he sticks my name Darby Todd into Facebook, then you can find me there. We can become virtual friends.
What's
Awesome.
actually very funny, mate, is so if you do put Darby Todd into Google, you get your link to the Martin Barr Band. You get a link to All About Jazz. You get the Meet Darby Todd via Toontrack, but you also get darbytodd.com, mate.
Oh
you
yeah.
Got to update that because there's a guy.
Who uses websites anymore? That's like
I'm having a look.
Now, next thing you know, you're going to be telling me that I've got to get one of those old CRT TVs for my house.
Well, that's a beauty. That's a beauty of a website.
I think that was done about like 15 years ago, and I never touched it again.
You don't say.
The only reason I went looking is because you have played with my guitar hero, and that's the late Gary Moore.
Oh, Gary.
That's why I went digging.
So what's the story there? No. Because now we can get into the important stuff, which is guitars.
So I used to do a lot of touring with a guitarist called Buddy Whittington, who played with John Mayall for a lot of years.
Oh, nice.
And through that, Gary Moore used to get up and join us because he was a fan of Buddy's. And then I did a couple of little other things with Gary, and then so that was always fun. Like occasionally I come across the videos of me with Gary on YouTube, and it's like, yeah, that's actually really cool.
Yeah.
But then he did call me, and he'd been having drummer troubles, and he wanted to swap out his drummer for his next tour. And he called me right in the middle of my first rehearsal with Justin Hawkins. And I was I was sitting there, and he's like, do you want to do the next tour? It starts in 5 weeks or whenever it was. And I obviously had the tour with Justin coming up, and I was sort of in a quandary of, do I take the well-paid gig and go off with Gary Moore, legend, or, I was a member of, the first band Justin had after The Darkness. It's like, or do I finally have my go actually possibly being in a successful band? Because I think, if you're going to try and be in a successful band, do it with a guy that sold 5 million albums, you stand a little bit more of a chance. Yeah. So I ended up turning Gary down, and I couldn't do it. And we still played a couple of times after that, but I still I made the right choice, actually, because a lot of really cool stuff came out of doing that gig with Justin. Things that I think if I'd gone off with Gary, I wouldn't have done. And I was just at that point, I was getting a bit bored of being a sideman. I wanted my little chance at sort of fame and rock and roll, which
what was Justin Hawkins' second band then? What was
it was a band called Hot Leg.
Oh, I remember Hot Leg.
Yeah, that was me.
Oh, cool.
In the span.
Actually, it was never spandex for me. We were joking at the start of the tour. We're like, right, what are we all going to wear? And Justin, one of the band members went, oh, you should wear cut off denim shorts, Darby. And I was like, wear my denim shorts, knee lengths, during the summer. Why not? That might be a laugh. And then Justin proceeded in the middle of rehearsal to cut. He said, "I'll bring a pair of jeans and I'll cut them up for you." And literally, it looked like Borat's Mankini. It was awful. And I think I wore them for like one gig before I just said, right, no way am I doing this. Not going to happen. But yeah, Justin had a habit of doing stuff like that. It's quite funny, really. But actually, and then obviously Hot Leg sort of disbanded, and Justin went back to The Darkness. But then I ended up covering the drum chair in The Darkness for about a few months, while Ed, their drummer at the time, was away. So that was fun. So again, if I had taken the Gary gig, I wouldn't have got to like headline the Isle of Wight festival with The Darkness. And there's definitely something about like playing a big festival, but playing really iconic songs with the people that wrote that song was really cool. And as much as Gary is great, at the time for me, playing, Get Your Hands Off My Woman or I Believe in a Thing Called Love in front of a crowd going mental was really awesome.
Yeah, there's
cool.
Playing I Believe in a Thing Called Love to a wedding crowd.
I've done that as well.
And there's nothing wrong with it, but there is something to be said for playing it to 70,000 people in a field. That's quite cool.
Exactly. Yeah, it's cool. The other one actually I had was playing with Key Marcello, because obviously he was a guitar player in Europe, like the Final Countdown and all of that. And I'd just done a big show with Key, like on the Friday night, playing it in front of like a few thousand people. And then I flew back to England early the next morning. And the following night, I had to play the Final Countdown again at a Jewish bar mitzvah. complete complete with all the horns doing like and it's just so funny, kind of looking at the life of in fact, I think this is a valid point. So I'm jumping between things now, but I put this on my like a Facebook post or Instagram years ago, where I put a picture of Friday night's gig, which was playing with the Darkness at Tea in the Park in front of about 90,000 people, and then Saturday night's gig, which was me playing with my friend Tom Worrell at a 13th birthday party in front of about 12 kids. But and it's the same thing with like the Final Countdown thing. It's just like, as musicians, one day everything's awesome. The next day, you're doing something that you might deem as a bit sort of, oh, why am I doing this? But as I said earlier, with music, everything's valid. We've all got to work. And I don't think there's anything less good about playing a function to 20, 30 people than there is playing to, 90,000 people with the Darkness. It's work. And I think anyone that can make music, can make money these days playing music, whether it's functions, whether it's social clubs, whether it's Bon Jovi, whether it's teaching, you're successful. And that's really cool.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. And it doesn't matter how you make that money. It's just a lot more fun sometimes when you get to do the really cool stuff.
And as we've said a couple of times, and I've probably said to you, Paul, at various times, COVID is actually sorting out the those that can do from those who can talk it. Because say from chatting with Darby and chatting between us, and the people who can do it and go out there and make the opportunities are still making those opportunities, be it during a global pandemic, during lockdown, the sequel, as we are now in as of today. Yep. That's exciting. We're still out there doing it, whereas there are far too many people who are whinging about it. It's difficult. Making a living in the music industry is difficult, period.
At the best of times, it's difficult. Yeah, it's
at the moment it's a challenge, but you go out there, you get the opportunities. I mean, have you been in the studio today all day?
I got to my studio about 10:30 a.m. and I left at 6. Yeah. And I literally worked the entire day. And I actually, because I've had so much recording work the last month, I actually managed to fit in 90 minutes practice as well, which was amazing. So first thing I did, got in, edited a song from the day before. I had to comp a song together because I'd done a ton of takes. I had to work out, which bits worked and which didn't. I guess that's kind of the painful side of working over Dropbox and not being in a room together, is that you don't quite know what you're going for. And then I started on the next song for this album, and then I practiced.
Nice.
Check out for that. You need to check out a piece of software that Paul and I use all the time, even pre-lockdown. When Paul's at his studio and I'm here working on drum parts for the Studio Rats, called Listen to by a company called Audio Movers. Stick it on the master bus, and then you send them a link, and then they can listen either in their DAW.
I know it. Yeah, I know it. In fact, Dave Marks was forcing me to listen to how good it was the other day. There's another company as well that my friend in Sweden was telling me about that does exactly the same thing. But it's pretty cool, and that's something that I need to invest in, I think, because that would make life a lot easier.
Yeah. A lot less Dropboxing, a lot less. No, I mean, Paul will be like, yeah, I liked that, but can you do it a bit more like this?
Could you just play less toms?
That's pretty much what I get most of the time.
Can you just play one?
No. Yeah, could you just take them away? That's a good idea, because actually it does get pretty boring just sort of like having to bounce stuff out, after you've done 10 takes and send them through to people. The only good thing for me is I've kind of got to the point now where after I've demoed stuff up, I pretty much know what people want. So normally I do my comps and people are kind of like, that's cool. And occasionally I go, oh, can you just stay with the programming or something like that. So, but yeah, that listen to thing is definitely on my list of things I need to do.
It's very
Whereabouts
cool.
is your studio, Darby?
It is in Leatherhead in Surrey, so
right.
Junction 9 of the M25. So I do my
Whereabouts?
recording out there. There's a studio there called Tweeters.
Yeah,
So
I
I
know
have
Tweeters.
so I have a permanent room there.
Oh, do you?
There's a few of us, like me. Jeff Dunn has a room there. A couple of other people. So yeah, it's good.
Oh, nice.
So I just go in and just get on with my work every day and sort of come home when I'm finished. But it's good. It's I mean, you talk about the whole sort of COVID thing and people sort of getting on with it and not moaning so much. But I guess, you know, but well, people like all of us, we're really lucky because we have our own studios. And obviously with something like drums, it's not necessarily so easy to be able to set up and practice and play a live drum kit. So I guess I'm fortunate in that respect. But yeah, I mean, for me, the whole lockdown thing is I'm never going to have this much time to get stuff done. You know, the last 2-3 years, I've just been constantly on tour around the world. So haven't even been home that much.
Didn't you get married about a year, 18 months ago?
Yeah, last July.
Because
July
I mean,
2019.
Your wife must now know who you are. Because say you're on tour all the time.
Yeah, completely. Well, in fact, the day after our wedding, I had a festival in Barcelona. So we flew out to Barcelona for me to do this festival, and then had like a little mini moon before we went on honeymoon this past January. But yeah, it is strange spending this much time at home. It's actually really nice. I mean, I do miss touring because I would say, you know, touring and gigging is probably 85% of my income. And, you know, suddenly since March, when this kicked off, I was on tour in South America. We were in Chile at the time, and we had to like come home on 24 hours notice and like cancel the tour. So, and since then I've done 3 shows since March. I mean, I normally probably do over 200 a year.
Wow.
3 gigs since March.
The weird one for me was when I had twins. I went from doing 150 odd gigs a year to 2.
Yeah.
Overnight, I stopped gigging. It was so weird. It took me about a year to realize what a weekend was for.
Yeah. Well, at least that was by choice, though. You know, there's a difference between choice and it being thrust upon you. So I do a lot of work with do you know Derek Nash, the sax player?
Yeah, sax peel and Protect the Bay.
Yeah, and Jules Holland and tons of other people.
Oh, man. Is that really the name? Is that really the name of his?
Yeah, what's better than 1 saxophone? 5. I don't know why I held up 10 fingers when I said 5. But yeah, Derek gave me a good bit of advice, which was like, once you're married, and actually I don't even think you need to be married for this, but he said, book in time off in your schedule as if it's a gig, so that when someone phones you on those days and goes, oh, are you free to do this? You just go, sorry, I'm busy. But as we all know, being a musician, it's very hard to go, oh, do you want to do a gig on the weekend for 350 quid? You're kind of like, yeah. My one night off, I've made a ton of money this month, but yeah, I should make some more. And actually, you know, that's the other thing I've learned about COVID is I don't need nearly as much money as I thought I did to live. You know, it's life's not as expensive as I thought it was.
That's interesting.
The most expensive stuff we have at the moment is our Amazon bill at the end of the month.
Oh yeah,
exactly.
I'm killing Amazon.
I saw a thing that said it was the people who've won out of COVID, and I think it was Jeff Bezos's personal fortune has gone up over $1 billion since COVID.
Yeah, it's crazy.
On Amazon. So out there in YouTube and Facebook Live land, if you have any questions, we'll do normal tech questions as well. They haven't got to just be drummy. Of course, it makes sense, but Darby can talk tech with the best of us. You're incredibly well equipped in your studio for a drummer.
Yeah,
You've got seriously nice toys in there.
Yeah, I mean, not probably quite as many as you do, but I'm pretty proud of what I have.
Mine is unhealthy. My gear acquisition syndrome is definitely it's a curse rather than a benefit. But you've got those very lovely Neve Pre's.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I started my studio back in about 2010, which because I had so many people messaging me and going, oh, can you play on my album? How much do you charge? Blah blah blah. And then as this was kind of maybe the mid 2000s, people go, how much do you charge? Great, we're going to this studio, we'll go to that studio, we'll make a record. And then come about 2007 onwards, people were starting to say to me, oh, can you play on my album? How much? Have you got your own studio? And what I learned was, I think it was kind of the start of everything going wrong for modern studios, where people just didn't have budgets and didn't want to pay for a musician and somewhere to record. So I realized at that point, I think it's time I need to start doing this myself and actually invest in some gear. So the first thing I got a Digi 003. That was my first interface, which, actually was really cool. And then I never wanted to skimp from the beginning, because I always knew this is something this is the future. And I kind of think back in like the 2009, 2010, home recording still wasn't nearly as big as it is today. Would you agree? Am I wrong?
Totally.
About then? Yeah, not many people were really doing it. And I just thought, this is kind of the future of how things are going to be. And there's no point, buying crappy gear that I'm just going to have to replace in a year or 18 months. So I sold a drum kit I had, bought a Digi 003. That was probably the worst thing in my chain. I bought, Sennheiser 421s for my toms, set Neumann KM 184s for the overheads, couple of 57s for my snare. And then I got a I listened to all the things online, and I was like, I think I really like the sound of Neve. So I bought myself just a stereo Neve 1073, and then that became 8 channels of Neve. Got some more Neve, and then I replaced my interface with a Apollo 16, because I didn't really have any need for the built-in mic pre's. And that's where I am today. So I'm glad I did it properly from the start and didn't cut corners, because in fact, probably the worst thing about my recording setup, and it's not really that bad, is my room. I don't have a room that's 30 foot long and 20 foot wide. But the recordings I get sound really good, and people don't go, oh, doesn't sound like it's not from a professional studio. Like they're impressed. So it's cool.
I think it's funny about when you say about studios closing. I think I'm not going to say the big studios survive, because they clearly haven't. But I think it was definitely a boom or bust thing there. But I think there is still a reason for a big studio. There's a reason why Capitol, East West, all these the places of legend that exist. And it's because if you want an orchestra somewhere, you have to go to a big room.
Yeah. I think, and they sound amazing.
Yeah, it's the provincial studios, the kind of the local town studio has gone, because everyone has now got that level of kit in their bedroom, and that's the truth. One of the big winners again from COVID is high-tech music retail has had a fantastic year. Because everyone's buying microphones, everyone's buying interfaces, and everyone's realizing that the first thing they bought a year or two ago is probably not the stuff they should have been buying, and they've upgraded.
But don't you think with that there's just going to be like an influx of secondhand gear coming soon, especially as people go,
hopefully,
now.
hopefully it's good stuff.
Yeah,
and eBay's are rubbing their fingers together for their 10% commission on everything.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I hopefully people that buy this stuff will continue to make music. I mean, I've always said the best thing about the internet and home studios now is that anyone can make music, but at the same time, the worst thing is that anyone can make music.
Yeah, so true.
So
you've heard of stuff, then, have you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't want to say.
Doesn't mean you have the ability, or doesn't mean you have these.
Completely. But this is like the same thing we were talking about earlier, just going back to drums, where you said, not all the best players are the best teachers. Actually, I've known some teachers that are amazing, absolutely amazing teachers that can pick up everything you're doing wrong in 30 seconds, but they're not the best performers. They're not the best players. So it's kind of the same thing.
But I think the whole phrase "those that can do, those that can't teach" is so unfair, because, as you say, there are great teachers out there who should not be on stage, but they'll watch you and go, they'll pick that thing up, that tick you've got, that bad posture, that, you know.
Yeah, completely.
I've been very lucky to have some great teachers over the time, some of whom were great on stage, some of whom, quite frankly, should have been locked in their teaching studios and were.
Who was that?
Can't possibly say, because I would offend a lot of people if I said it, and I can't. I'm not going to say. I can't.
You could tell me off air.
I will off air. I can't possibly say. But so questions, folks. Good evening, Mr. Ayton. Good to have you in the house.
Hi, Safi.
Yep, Safi's in. Any questions coming in from the masses out there? If not, we're going to get techie and start talking drums in a minute.
And I got a question. I got a question. So you've obviously got the V drums in the background.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on V drums versus?
So I used to hate electronic drums, years ago when I tried them. I was just like, but I used to play drums in the Lion King in the West End, and part of the show was on electronic drums. And every time it got to that part of the show, hated it. It sounded crap. It felt horrible. And then because I've started doing all the Tune Track stuff, I finally relented and got some good V drums. They're amazing. Like I completely changed opinion. What they've achieved in the last few years in terms of realism is fantastic. It's crazy. I mean,
go on.
Sorry, go on.
Do you use the sounds that are built in?
Yes, but obviously because I'm doing a lot of work for Tune Track, I have to run it through Superior Drummer for that. But I mean, the sounds that are built in sound great. Tune Track sounds just you can't top Tune Track sounds. They're just literally the best. They do so much cool stuff. I was going to say, it's still, as much as the V drums are great, for me it's no substitution for playing a real drum kit. I mean, I always want to play a real drum kit, but it's amazing. And like when I listen back to some of the packs I've done for Tune Track, it's just sounds, well, it is a real drummer. It's me, and it sounds great. And I think that as well, the thing with the Tune Track stuff which makes it so great is that we don't then, after I played stuff, I don't just quantize it. You know, it's not put to 100%. It's like the whole point about those MIDI grooves is we play them as we feel them, like you would on a real drum kit. And I think that's what makes a difference. So people that play electronic drums and then quantize them 100%, it's always going to sound fake.
So interestingly, do you remember at Gadget Show you were playing on a Roland TD12?
I remember playing on something. Yeah.
Well, I bought that kit after that gig. And
do you still have it?
No, God, I hated it. I still hate it.
Yeah.
I think what it was is as drums are loud. Drums are inherently loud, and if you're playing stadium rock gigs or big venues, it's not an issue. When you're doing marquees or functions or whatever, volume is becoming an issue everywhere.
For sure. Sure.
And I decided I was going to use this thing live for, probably 70% of the gigs we were doing at the time. And I think there is definitely something about the kick drums on those things always sound great. They always do, because the process, they sound big and fat and you get that nice punch. The rest of the kits sounded fairly dreadful. And actually, after 6 months of trying to do it, I gave myself quite bad tennis elbow, because there's no dynamics. You're trying to get something from the kit that's not coming back.
Yeah, I think that is probably the biggest problem still with electronic drums, is that you don't have to put the effort in to get the sound that you need. Playing a real kit, it's like a guitar. If you strum a guitar a certain way, it's going to sound like weak and crap. You play it with a bit of attitude, it sounds good. And it's the same thing with drums. You've got to be able to feel the response from what you put in, and that is the only downside with electronic drums, is you can just hit it like that, and depending on how you set your velocities, it sounds fantastic every time, which is not realistic. It doesn't matter how great a drummer you are. If you're in a studio, there's always going to be a mishit. There's always going to be a snare that's just not as accurate as the other ones. But that's part of the feel. That's part of the vibe. But I've got to say, that's a TD-27 I've got there, which is one of the upper ranges, not the 50, but I didn't get the 50 because I didn't need all the extra sounds, and the 27 was fine. But I'm having a great time on it, and especially when I've got to learn songs for tour, just saves me driving 10 miles to my studio to actually do it. But it's a lot. I used to hate them. Now I'm scarily impressed.
They've come a long way from, what was that orange thing? What was the orange kit? The sounds were
like
really
the old Simmons things.
No. This is. I think they were still around.
D drums.
No, D drums were a thing.
They were orange.
Two box.
That's the one.
Yeah.
The sounds were great, but you had to. It was like playing a real kit, which I suppose is cool in some ways, but I sit in there and I can play with dynamics and feel and groove. I know Paul doesn't believe me, but you play a real kit and you play it in a very dynamic way. I find it very difficult to play those things dynamically because I just do. But say that might have changed with the newer ones, with the later ones. Questions coming in. Questions.
Yeah. Do you prefer it now on stage with quieter in-ears guitars these days? Is he
in-ears versus wedges, I suppose?
You know what? There's no substitute for just turning a wedge on stupidly loud and killing your hearing. I mean, obviously, we don't want to kill our hearing, but for me now, like especially on the Martin Parr Jethro Tull thing I do. Because we have Clive Bunker, the original drummer from Tull, on it as well. We play double drums. And we worked out that the best way to do that was for me to be on in-ears on click track and then have him play to me. So I do use in-ears now, and I actually quite enjoy using in-ears, but there's still sometimes I just want to turn a monitor up and feel the room.
Do you use a thumper like what are the
Porter and Davis?
That's the one, yeah.
I've got to say, brilliant names. Go on, give me the name.
It used to be called the Bum Chum.
The Bum Chum. That's it.
But I'll do one called a butt kick.
Yeah, Bum Chum. Way better.
So we were on tour in Australia last year, and I had it on my tech rider for a Porter and Davis thing. And 75% of the time I get what I wanted, and then you turn up in like Adelaide, and they wouldn't have one. And I went through Pearl, I went through some other companies' things, and I've got to say, I bought the Porter. They're not paying me to say this. I bought it with my own money. It's the best investment. I nearly really swore there. It's the best investment of recent times that I've actually done. It's absolutely life-changing. You got in-ears in. Suddenly, I don't have to crank the in-ears up to hear all the bottom end. Do I have tinnitus? Yes, I do. I wish I listened to. God, I wish I listened to my grandma back in the day when she was like buying me earplugs for Christmas and birthdays, and I'd be like, "Piss off! I don't need these." Wear earplugs and look after yourself.
Present.
But yeah, great. Thanks, Grandma. I wanted an action man, but you got me earplugs. But yeah, so I'd get other companies' things, and I think Pearl was one of them. And literally, it got to the point where if it wasn't a Porter and Davis, I just told him to shove it back in the truck, and I'd just play without one. They're that good. Cannot recommend it enough. But I don't just put kick drum through it. Like I put a bit of like floor toms in there, stuff like that. Every now and then our monitor guy thinks it's really funny to like boost it at 60 hertz massively, so it like knocks me off the stool. But yeah, it's an amazing thing, and I think bass players can buy them now, like little sort of tabletop things that you stand on, and you can feel it through your feet, and it's cool.
Oh, nice,
really cool. So
it's funny. When I came off ships, having obviously cruise ship, small space, no real ability to reach out and enjoy the sound. I'd been home about 2 days and went straight up to Butlins to do a gig where they put a twin 18 sub and a top next to me, and it was like, boom, oh, this is glorious. I can feel bass again.
Yeah,
I've broken a rib with every single kick drum, but
yeah, it's good that. I mean, actually, sometimes if I've got the luxury, I'll use in-ears in my stall, and I'll still use a massive sub behind me just so I can sort of feel the air sort of smacking me in the back. But like I say, with the stall, you don't need that anymore. But is there a guitarist trouser flapper? I think that's probably that's a question for Paul. He looks like he knows about those sort of things.
That's a good idea, though, isn't it? We need some
trouser flapper.
Yeah.
It's funny,
right?
I've got jokes that I want to say, but I'm not.
The only time I actually got to see Gary Moore live was on the it was one of the last bands he had was Scars, which is Cass Lewis on bass and Darren Mooney from Primal Scream on drums. Great power trio. And I swear they were supporting Whitesnake of all bands.
Wow, that's cool.
Huge rig, Sheffield Arena, great gig. And I swear I could hear the two Marshall TSL 100s direct.
He loved it. He loved it loud, didn't he?
Yeah, more than I could hear.
You played with him, Darby.
So I got a story about that. We were playing somewhere. Can't remember where it was, and I was shouting at the monitor engineer because he had like 3 Marshalls just to the right. I was looking at the monitor engineer going, "Turn Gary down. I'm going deaf. It really hurts." He thought I was saying turn it up, and he just kept turning him up.
Oh, man,
so loud. But going back to what you were talking earlier, James, about like practicing and really being good at your craft. I remember I wasn't playing with Gary at the time, but there was we're doing the Planet Rock Christmas party. So I was with Justin Hawkins and Gary was on the bill, just 2 bands. And Gary was backstage before the gig, and I swear he was in his dressing room for about 4.5 hours practicing his guitar on full volume in that room.
Wow.
Just wailing away 4.5 hours. Like that's dedication, when you even on show day and you want to play that much of your instrument. That's how much he was dedicated to his craft. And that's why he was so good.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely amazing.
Have you seen the YouTube video of Steve Lukather waking his next door neighbours up?
I love that video.
I've heard about it. I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's fantastic.
His next door neighbours are something's kicking off, and they were making noise, and so the next day he just clearly decides I have way more firepower than you. So wanders out into his back garden with a couple of Bogners on foot, giving it large. And I'm like, I have to admit, I would be out there enjoying it. I don't know what it was.
Oh, that was amazing. He's definitely one of the guitarists on my list that I want to play with. I mean, I've been fortunate. I seem to end up playing with so many amazing guitar players, but he's one of them that's not quite on the list yet.
He's amazing.
But yeah,
you do seem to spend an awful lot of time in the Nordics as well. How's that worked out? Are you like their substitute? We can't find a Nordic drummer. Let's fly Darby.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm slowly infiltrating Sweden. But again, this is kind of like I guess it started out as a bit of luck where I got the phone call to do a tour with Key Marcello, the Europe guitarist, and it was only like 5 dates, and I only had to cancel like one function to do it. And I was like, I really want to do this. It's going to be cool. And me and Key hit it off so well. I wish I'd met him 30 years ago because he's such a great musician. But through playing with him, suddenly I ended up on the Joe Lynn Turner gig. Suddenly I ended up on the Rock of 80s gig, which was like Key, Andreas Johnson, the guy that had that massive hit a few years ago, and a load of other famous Swedish people. And and now I do a ton of work with a guitarist called Per Nilsson, who's a guitarist in a band called Meshuggah. I don't know if you know that band, the metal band. Yeah. So I'm working tons with him. So it's just like one gig has led on to so many awesome musical things, and that's kind of what happens, really. I think as long as obviously you have to be good at what you do, that's well, maybe you don't, but I think it helps. But then if you get on with people and you're on the same sort of wavelength as them, it always just escalates and goes up like that. So I'm infiltrating Sweden. It's kind of, before the pandemic hit, I was there every other weekend.
Great.
And it's cool. It's fun there. Got a ton of friends, and like I say, I did Key Marcello's album there last week. Actually, at a really nice studio, this place called Top Floor Studios, which is in the middle of Gothenburg. And like literally, you walk out the door, 1 minute walk. There's a Hard Rock Cafe. There's all the bars. There's all the restaurants. And Jake, the guy that runs that place, has got a massive SSL board, and it sounds absolutely amazing, and he knows how to use it. So yeah, I love, as much as I love my studio, there's nothing better than going to a good studio somewhere else and having someone else engineer you and make you sound good.
Yeah, have the pressure.
I love engineering. I love engineering, but I kind of hate having to engineer myself. I want to do one or the other. But I don't always have that luxury, especially during lockdown.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, it's just one of those things, and it's what we're stuck with at the moment. Aman says, any suggestions for a good electronic drum kit, please?
The Roland TD27 that I have now, I think is amazing. It's like the sort of mid-range one that they do now. And I think in the shops, it's probably about £2,500 English pounds. So it's not, it's not stupid. Of course, it's expensive, but it's not stupid money. And I do think, in a way, you get what you pay for. And if you skimp at the beginning, you're going to end up having to just spend more money to replace it at a later date. So I'm one of those people. I'd rather save up my money and buy something I actually need rather than buying an interim thing.
What's the phrase? Buy cheap, buy twice.
Yeah.
There are other brands out there.
Of course,
is very good. If you are on a really tight budget, the Alesis stuff is okay, but it ain't gonna last as much as the Roland stuff. Roland have been doing it a lot of years now, and they're very good at it.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It's like you get any company that's been manufacturing something for ages. They've just got to that point where they know exactly what they're doing. Whereas other companies that maybe aren't quite as good now, give them another 5-10 years, they'll probably be just as good. But until it gets to that point, I'd always rather go for what I deem to be the best possible thing.
It always makes me laugh, though, that obviously the whole electric phenomenon started with Simmons. Where are they now? I know they still exist as a company, but they're not making electronic drums anymore.
I don't know.
As well, like 20 years ago, probably 25 years ago, a Simmons kit was considered, like an absolute pile of crap, and no one wanted them. And then, in the last 5 years, they've just gone through the roof.
Yeah, but that's the same with a lot of things. A few, 20 years ago, you could pick up old German valve microphones, 10 a penny. Yeah. All of a sudden, anything with a Neumann badge and a U in the title is a seriously expensive piece of kit.
Yeah. Well, I'm working on. I've spent lockdown doing my own album because I've wanted to do it for ages, and it's like finally I actually have the time to be at home and make a record. Oh, nice. And I've just spent the tune I'm doing at the minute. I've just been triggering loads of like old sort of Lindrum sounds and Rototom sounds for this song. Cool. So I'm kind of doing that as well. So that's been a lot of fun.
Who are you using on the album? Who's guesting?
It kind of got a little bit out of control. The idea was it was just going to be a few friends that I work with most of the time. So Key Marcello from Europe, great bass player called Lee Pomeroy who does Yes Lee. And ELO. Yeah, Lee's awesome. On it. And then do you know Jem Godfrey?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
He Jem Frost.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, well, I've just been playing drums on the new Frost album. So me and another drummer, Kaz, have been doing the drums. So in fact, I just finished a song for him yesterday, but Jem's on a load of it. But then I just started like messaging people that I toured with or I liked. And, suddenly now on my own, I'm going to miss people out. So I apologize to them.
Are you ready? Are you ready for the sound effect for the name drops as well?
Yeah. Stick your lead boots on so you don't fucking stub your toe. But, I've got everyone on it from Key Marcello, Justin Hawkins from The Darkness, Pear from Meshuggah, Don Airy from Deep Purple, Matthias Eklund from Freak Kitchen. Oh God, who else is on it? A couple of people I can't tell you about yet.
Are we allowed to say he of the silly beard? Are we allowed to say guitar player who plays a double neck, one fretless, one fretted? Are we allowed to?
No.
No, fair enough. That's just
you just did.
I just did.
No, you didn't. Who else is on it? So yeah, Don Airy, Deep Purple, Pear from Meshuggah. I've already said that. God, this is awful. I can't. Lawrence Cottle's on bass on some of it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, loads of amazing players, and it's just kind of bizarre that yeah, you know, I can sort of like send a text, and I guess this is kind of validation that I'm doing something good. Is that I can, my friend Charlie Griffith today from Haken's doing some guitars for me, and it's kind of like it makes me realize when you send a message to someone, go, oh, do you want to play on my album? And they go, yeah, man, I'd love to, and it's great. Matthias Eklund, do you know him, the guitar player?
No,
Swedish guy.
No.
You see him on like the front cover of all the magazines and stuff. He's absolutely phenomenal and so different to so many of the other people. You know what? I'm gonna. This is really rude, but I want to look at the list of musicians on my record because I'm sure I'm sure I'm missing someone really cool out, and I feel like that would be really, really offensive to them. So that's what happens when you have a beer and you're talking crap with people. All right, who else have we got? Adam Wakeman is on it, you know, from Ozzy's band. Barry Dunaway, the bass player from 38 Special, which an amazing band. Simon McBride on guitar. I don't know if you know him.
Yeah.
He plays with Don Airy. Carl Verheyen from Supertramp. God, how did I forget him? Yeah.
Wow.
Carl Verheyen. Yeah, just Martin Barr from Jethro Tull. God, I apologize to all of you for forgetting you've done all this amazing work for me. The thing is, though, I will never make an album again. This has been it's been amazing, and it's been like the bucket list thing that I've always wanted to do. But it's what an effort it's been, especially during lockdown. I kind of going back to like the process of making music. I did it in such a backwards way, which if lockdown hadn't happened, I wouldn't have had to do. Where basically the songs I had, the album's like half sort of fusion covers that I love, and then half originals that actually some have been written by me and Dave Marks. So I would do like demo drums, and I'd probably do them to like the backing tracks, or even like the original song, you know. And if it was like there's a song called Mr. Spock, which was like an old Tony Williams, Alan Holdsworth tune, which was nowhere near in tempo at all. So I had to like drag it into Logic and sort of like use a smart tempo to sort that out, record demo drums, start sending it to people. And then once I had a nice base of like bass and some rough guitar or piano, then I went in and re-recorded my drums to what they'd done. And it was just such the wrong way to make an album. But it was kind of the only way that I could do it in this environment. You know, we couldn't go anywhere. But the great thing is it actually sounds like we're all playing in a room together and haven't actually just been Dropboxing backwards and forwards.
Awesome.
So that's good. But
is it all instrumental? Or is it all instrumental, or have you got any vocals?
There's one vocal song. I did a cover of Manic Depression by Jimi Hendrix because I absolutely love that song. I think it's great, which Simon McBride plays and sings on. I actually asked Joe Lynn Turner to sing on that, but he couldn't do it due to record company issues.
Yeah, Simon's a really good player. He's a really
Simon's great. And in fact, I've been over lockdown. I played on a few of his tunes as well. That he's been sort of releasing. So it's kind of the thing I like about I don't like about lockdown. I don't like lockdown at all. But the thing I do like is that I feel like all the musicians have kind of been getting together and helping each other. You know, people have been working on my album. I've been working on their album. You know, and at the end of this, hopefully, when we get back to some vague sense of normality, everyone's going to have product to sell or something to put out there or put on YouTube. And I think that's good. I think we're at a point where we all kind of have to help each other. Doesn't necessarily always have to be about money.
Yeah, it's really good.
Although money would be helpful.
At some point, we will get back to something known as normality and gigging and audiences and stuff.
I'm struggling to see how it's going to be the same. I mean, I had this year, 2020 was meant to be my best year of touring and earning money. It was going to be amazing, and suddenly, it just got swiped away from me like that. But even next year, like, we were meant to be in South America again in March. That's been cancelled. Australia, New Zealand, and Japan in next July has been postponed to the following January. I've got 2 months in America with Martin Barr in April and May. Is that going to happen? Isn't it going to happen? Just don't know. It's very hard to plan for things and work out, what will or won't happen. And like, even if for instance, they're saying, oh, April and May might be cool for America, but there's going to be socially distancing at the concerts. The problem is, it costs us X thousands of dollars a night to keep the band on the road. And if we're only, selling 600 tickets instead of 1,200 in a theatre, it's not cost effective to do the tour. And it's not that we don't want to play, but no one wants to suddenly be losing money to go to America and play. So I don't know what's going to happen. I really hope something changes. So I think really we need to wait for a vaccine.
So speaking to a friend of mine who works at Live Nation, he said there will be no US bands in Europe in 2021 for one reason: insurance.
What's that?
Insurance.
Right.
They can't get COVID cover effectively,
right?
Because you put 2 tour buses worth of people on the road. That's a COVID breakout waiting to happen.
Yeah.
Another friend of my wife's is he's one of the mechanics from McLaren Formula One team, and he hasn't seen his wife since July because they went into Formula One went into a bubble. So Formula One could.
I see what you're saying.
So it could happen.
Right.
They went into a bubble, and they've been the bubble has been moving around the tracks that they've been using, and I think probably at some point, until we get a vaccine that people are willing to take, and that's a whole nother political level. I mean, we haven't even talked about the fact your dual citizenship.
Yeah. It's not like anything is going on to talk about with that.
No, not at all. No, there's nothing happening in America, is there? We're with you, friends over there. We are with you. And depending on
I've been following that religiously, though. It's like I really want to see what happens. It's pretty crazy. I remember 4 years ago, it's like I went to sleep. Who's going to win? You wake up in the morning, oh, Trump's in. Now suddenly it's been like 2.5 days. They still don't even have an answer. It's kind of exciting, really.
Yeah, well, kind of exciting in a really nervous kind of, oh my God, no one really knows what's going to happen, even if there's an answer.
No matter who wins that, whether it's Trump or Biden, I think there's definitely going to be trouble in the streets. It's not going to be.
It's not going to be
no. Regardless of who wins, it's. But hopefully they'll sort it out and it'll all calm down and get back to some sense of normality.
It would be nice. It would be very nice.
Hopefully
Darby,
our country will get back to some normality as well.
That would be nice too. So if we could have the whole world go back to normal, please, that'd be fabulous. Darby, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat.
It has.
Cool.
And catch up. And we didn't get too drummy nerdy, did we? We didn't go down.
No, I was surprised.
We haven't really geeked out about gear either.
It's very upsetting.
We'll have to come back next week and do like a Christmas special on geeking out about plugins and gear
and sticks and heads and cymbals and no.
Oh, come on. Look at Paul. He wants to talk about sticks and drum heads. You can see it in his eyes.
I love sticks and
but seriously, just for a minute, just to get back to drums, I suspect you're like me, as in it's the right tool for the right job at the time. You don't go, I'm gonna hit every single cymbal I've got in my arsenal on this song. You think, right, okay, this is you pick the right tools for the right job.
Did that's drum recording.
But see, that's it's things like that. It's actually we joke, but it's not a stupid point. you know, it's not just about being good at whatever instrument you are. You have to do the job properly. And if the job requires one rack tom and a kick drum and nothing else, that's what you use. You can't just go throw yourself into something because that's how you hear it. You have to. People want me on their albums because they like what I do, but at the same time, I have to provide the song what it requires. And if that requires, you know, 5 China cymbals, I'll use 5 China cymbals. If it requires, you know,
Paul flinched then. 5 Chinas.
that's the most exciting.
That's the only part of the drum kit that I hate. I hate a China. Oh, I just think, what's the point? It's just like, it's so abrasive.
Oh, it's
yeah,
brilliant.
but that's the point. You just don't like them because you stand like they're next to your ear.
Maybe that's what it is.
China's good, although in this day and age, it stacks now, isn't it? That's like the trendy thing to have a stack.
Yeah, I like a stack. I like a stack. I like a stack to groove on. I'm not a crashy stacky person, but you know, to groove on a stack is nice. Armand says, question for each of you: one thing you have learnt during this pandemic in relation to your profession, if you could tell me. So, one thing you've learnt, Paul. I'll come to you next. So, Darby, one thing you've learnt during the lockdown and the pandemic.
Oh, is this me first or Paul?
You can go first.
Yeah, you go first.
Sorry, I just switched off for a minute and just started looking out the window. Right, what have I learned? All right, I know what I've learned, and I do not in any way mean this in a pretentious, weird way. I've learned the value of money. That's what I've learned, and I'll tell you why. You know, I've been fortunate. I do a lot of work. I make fairly good money, but I never had a concept of, you know, like, oh, I want to go out and buy a new Sennheiser 421. Oh, that's £300. I would just go, I got a gig on the weekend. It pays this. Oh, that's my bills are covered. I'll just buy that. So I never had a value of kind of having what something cost. I mean, obviously, you know, bigger items, yeah, you know, you save up for those, but a bit like, do you know what I mean, James? You just go, oh, I want that mic, or I want that mic pre, I'll just get it because, you know, next week's gigs are covering that, and you know, I've got some more gigs the week after that, that will cover the mortgage, it'll all be fine. Whereas now that my earning capacity has dropped 85%, I've learned the value of money, and I'm actually really grateful for that, because I think I was quite ignorant before when it came to, you know, buying things and do you know what I mean? Again, I don't mean that in a pretentious way, but I just go, all right, my gig on Saturday will pay for that, so I'll buy that, you know, and now I don't do that because I can't. I've got to think a bit more long term and be a bit more sensible.
Yeah, no, that.
So I think that's, yeah, I've lost that. I've learned that from the pandemic, I think.
Paul.
And yeah.
So what diversification, I think, is. Yeah, oh, sorry, mate, if you're going to get that. And I've got a lot of friends who are just full-time musicians, you know, not on Darby's level, but doing gigs and stuff, and that's all they do. And you know, they've now got absolutely nothing. So I'm quite thankful that that I diversified some time ago, as Darby has, right. Because Darby's got a studio, Darby works from home, Darby can work, and you know, James does you know, other stuff for brands and stuff, and it's just diversification. You cannot just be a musician anymore, or cannot just risk being a musician anymore. That's what I think.
Yeah, you have to cover a lot of bases, and they can still be within music.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Yeah, you're right. Gone are the, and you know, I've got a load of great musician friends that probably live week to week, you know, based on, you know, function gig. And again, there's nothing wrong with doing function gigs. There's nothing wrong with playing a wedding or a corporate. You know, when I'm not away on tour, I'll slot as many of those in as I can because I enjoy them. But yeah, you've got to cover bases, and you've got to try and make your life a bit easier. And I think even without the pandemic, the world's going more and more that way. You know, it's like you see the people that are becoming YouTube musicians and Instagram musicians. I mean, that we're opening up a whole nother can of worms with that, which I won't get sucked into today because I'll probably say some bad things. But you know, you've got to have other revenue streams coming in. You can't just rely on, playing your gigs on a Friday and Saturday night or touring, because it's not that world anymore. And once this pandemic's over, it's really not that world anymore. I mean, what corporates are going to go, oh great, pandemic's over, let's spend 50 grand on a Christmas do, and pay 7 grand for a band, and put in a free bar that costs 30. No one's going to do that, because everyone's lost their jobs, everyone's been furloughed. So yeah, you're extremely right. It's you've got to be able to cover all bases, or more bases.
More bases. Still in the music industry, still doing stuff.
Yeah,
James,
hopefully.
Hopefully.
I think one of the things I've learned is that there is a world outside that door. I self-confessed, I'm a complete workaholic. I'm very lucky. I love what I do. We all do. We wouldn't be doing. We wouldn't. I don't think you get into music. Well, you don't get into it for the money. You don't get into it for the glory. So why the hell do we do it? No, I'm a complete workaholic. I love what I do. And I would come down here at 8 a.m. every day, and I would stay in here till 8 p.m. and I'd probably go back and eat something, and I'd probably come back and I'd work till midnight, and I would not see the outside world. I have learned that there is a world out there, that it's full of children playing and fresh air and a wife and all those sort of things, that I think when you are in a band and you're touring or you're doing gigs every weekend, you forget a lot of the normality of having a family and all that sort of stuff. And it took me, from very consciously cutting back the number of gigs I was doing, which for me meant leaving the band I'd been with for 14 years. Although I didn't do that because of COVID, I did that because of children, and it was a very conscious decision. When you have twins, things change. But the thing I've learned is that they're still there. I don't have to spend 24/7 in this room, in this building. I can still go and see my children, and I can still do things. I don't have to feel guilty that I'm not working 24/7. And I've kind of come at this a very odd way, I think. But just because I love being sat here and messing around with drums and guitars and basses and toys, I can still be in there and be a dad, and I can enjoy that. I'm allowed to enjoy my time off as well. I don't have to have this whole kind of I can work, so I will work thing.
Yeah, that's good. And that comes back to what we were saying earlier. You have to make time for yourself, and you have to make time for other people. And it is very difficult sometimes to see that, because you can be very focused on the prize and the goal of what you want to do and where you want to be, but actually there is other shit going on out there. And if someone mentioned in the comments, Stuart Copeland, I think I saw an interview with Stuart Copeland where he went, if you actually get out and see the world and interact with other humans and see stuff and read things, it makes you a better musician. It makes you a better person anyway, and that is important. So it's not necessarily the healthiest thing just to stay in your studio for 20 hours of the day, sleep for 4, and get back at it, because you don't get any other culture in your life or influence.
When I used to tour with talent, doing like flyaway gigs, things like that, okay, it's not touring as in a tour bus or whatever, but I was always very conscious of saying, right, we're in a place, we're in Florence, we're in Abu Dhabi, we're in wherever. I'm going to go out for a walk and see this place, and I'm going to go and witness some of it. I don't just want to see the airport and the hotel room and the stage.
Yeah,
I like being outside, and actually the pandemic has reminded me that I like being outside. It's kind of difficult at the moment to go for a long walk and not go off and do something, because obviously theoretically we're in lockdown and we get an hour of exercise a day, and however much that actually works out, I don't know. But there's an outside out there, and it's worth exploring.
Completely. I was just going to drag the conversation out even longer, but I know everyone wants to go home. So, I was just going to say, we Alan Thompson, the bass player in Martin's band, we do that on tour all the time. Like we're probably in about New York 3 times a year, and we walk for like 10 miles a day, seeing it. We go to Alcatraz, we go to Niagara Falls, do the boat trip. We see everything, and it's great. I'm lucky I'm in a business where I can see stuff without having to pay for it.
I'll tell you what, mate. If you'd gone to Alcatraz while in New York, that was a bloody long walk.
Well, no, it was they were like a week apart. I wouldn't walk that far. 10 miles was enough for me.
Okay.
Anyway,
last question.
Sorry.
Last question. So Paul Fierro from Talkie Online. I saw Stuart Copeland playing once, and he had a small cymbal that constantly, spinned around on its side. What is the story on them? Anyone know?
No idea.
Oh,
no idea. But I am going to go look that up on YouTube and see if I can work it out.
As in spinning that way.
I'm guessing so. Yes.
Because it couldn't spin that way. The only person I've ever seen do spinning cymbals is an Indian percussionist, stroke drummer, percussionist, really, called Trilok Gurtu, who would put cymbals in buckets of water, so you get that kind of really cool sound, or like whether it's actually I'm still not entirely sure whether it's pronounced crotale or crotal, as in the kind of pingy cymbal things, and put those on a string into water. They sound amazing when you drop things into buckets of water, because obviously water has a very different sound coefficient than air and stuff. Very, very cool noise.
Awesome.
Yeah. Lots of love coming in from tonight. So Darby, again, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah,
it's been
Darby.
Cool. No, this has been fun. Hopefully it wasn't too boring
really
for the
good.
non-drummers.
It's been really good. Even as a non-drummist, I liked it.
Good. Still doesn't want to go down the pub for a beer with me, though.
Oh no, definitely a beer with it. You look like you're good on the beers, so I'd have
you know what? I'm the funny thing is, I said to James before this, I've got a bit. I've had such a long day in the studio. I was like, I really want a beer when I get home. I'm not a big drinker. I'm probably the world's worst drinker, like 2 pints and I'm done. So I'm the lightweight, but I can drive you home afterwards.
Awesome. But that's for that.
As is a drummer's way. We always have to
Yeah, exactly.
It's the way forward. Thank you out there in YouTube land and Facebook land for joining us. We will be back next week, next Wednesday, back to our normal Wednesday night slot, at 8 p.m. GMT. Thanks again to Darby. I can do that again. And we will see you all again very, very soon for some more Studio Rats live Q&A. Take care, everyone. Good night.
Cheers, guys.
Cool.
Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye.